This is Pastor Curry, pastor of the East Zion Fair Baptist Church, Wilmington's most exciting church, the church that love ya and anything you can do about it. Today with Coffee with Curry, we're going to talk to, as I call the legend, even though he's a very young brother, we're going to talk to brother Coby Owens, who co-hosts with me The Source. And I just want to get an opportunity to give you a chance to get to know this young man. Many of you have said to me, Pastor, what a bright and brilliant young man he is. Well, we're going to get into a side of his life story, talk a little bit about how he was reared, and he is a Wilmingtonian. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with him. Why don't you call somebody real quickly? Tell him Coffee with Curry is on, and let's get after it. And we're back. Well, it is a joy and a privilege to have Brother Coby Owens with us today. And I tell you, he is such a resource for The Source. And we kind of missed him last week when he was away in D.C. saving the world. But we're glad you're back home. How you doing, Brother Coby?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Yes. And listen, Coby, so many people have asked me, where did you find that guy? And the sad reality is I didn't find you. You were just out there fighting for the people. And before we get into some of the work that you've done in our community, I wanted to talk a little bit about you being reared here in Wilmington, talk a little bit about where you went to school at, even some of your primary days. Let's start there. Let's talk a little bit about you, Mom, and your life a little bit.
Yeah, so, I'm an only child. So it's always been very close between me, my mom, my grandmother. Born and raised over North Side, right down the street from PS in Harlan. And that's kind of who I am, right? I'm just a guy from North Side who loves the city. I went to school in the community. I went from the Brandywine School District, then I went to Catholic school right up the road to Christ Our King and to St. Helena's, and then I went to Sally. So I was always in walking distance of my house. Now, did I walk always? Probably not. No, I could have walked more. But, it was, I got a very unique experience at all those schools, but then also I had a ton of friends in my community and in my neighborhood who were still friends till this day. So I feel as though I was very blessed growing up to be from the north side of Wilmington.
Yeah, when you were talking just then, I was thinking about a scripture in the Bible where young Timothy, he was the protege of Paul. And he was raised by his mother and grandmother. He turned out to be quite a representative of scripture. I'm not saying you're Timothy, but what I am saying is there's something special about being reared. We do want dads in the home. Don't misunderstand that. But there's something special about being reared with mom and grandma. They put a craving for community, I believe, in you. Let's talk a little bit about that. Mom and grandma, was grandma in the same house or was she in a different house? Or how
she
did
was
that
only
roll?
a block away.
Okay, so
only
basically she was in the same house.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, that has a huge impact on anyone's life. And, it also made me really value family. I'm really big on family. So when I step away from the activism, from work, from the political and policy stuff, I'm usually talking, whether it's either one of those two or a cousin, an aunt, an uncle. I'm talking with family, hanging with family, and hanging with my inner circle, just to get away with things. And that's, I just love spending time with my family. I love planning family reunions just to make sure we all see each other because, especially over these last 2 years, a lot has changed. We've lost a lot of people. But even before then, it's always good to be able to come together and just, I'm big on sharing food and dancing.
Dancing?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to have to see that.
Line dancing. I love the line dance.
Okay.
But, just having fun together is the important thing. And I think, we're going to talk about some of the other stuff I do, but it just helps me break away from that and recenter myself. And have better self-care for myself as well, too.
Yeah, so you do have a safe space.
I do.
And that's important when you're trying to save the world. The question I always ask is, do you have a space for Coby?
Yeah.
Where Coby can go and find solace. Let me jump back to mom and grandmom. Is your mother our only child, or do you have other sisters and brothers? I mean, does she have other sisters and brothers?
My mom is an only child.
Oh, wow.
So we very similar upbringings and everything. My grandmother has 3 other siblings,
Okay.
so I
Okay.
do have other
Okay.
family on
Okay.
that
I
side
understand.
as well too. And then on my dad's side, he had multiple siblings as well too. So not necessarily isolated, but also I like my time to myself.
Amen.
I'll do my best work early in the morning or late at night, door closed, lights out, working on my laptop, right? That's always been me, not to be around a lot of people, which is very interesting to some people because it seems as though on, social media and everything, it looks like I'm always around people, but I'm not.
Okay, so you do have your safe place.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important as you try to save others, that you have a space where you can find refuge, where you can find strength. And you find that in family. That's really powerful. This Sunday at East Zion Fair, I preached about, we're dealing with this whole series of Reignite, and I preached on priorities. Sometimes when you don't have priorities, you burn yourself out.
Yep.
But you have a vision and you have priorities, which helps you to be able to find your safe space, which I think is remarkable. You said you went to several schools, and you're a product of both parochial and Catholic system.
Yes, I am.
What kind of student were you?
I was the jock who was also a nerd. I have very good grades in school, but I love to play sports. I played football, rugby, basketball, baseball.
Basketball?
Everything.
Baseball?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Everything.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, I played intramurals and everything. Tried my hand and, some other sports that I really didn't fall in love with. But mainly the main 2, I would say, is football and rugby that really took hold. And I played those for the longest.
Wow, that's excellent. And you found that in those sports, did you do well, or you just played with them?
No, I did well. All conference in football. And then in rugby, I made it all the way to college to play rugby, where we won a divisional championship. We helped turn the team around. We won the first ever Delaware State Championship.
Excellent.
I played both 15s and 7s. So 7s is a little more fast paced. We competed in the 3 times in the national high school competition. So, and we made it to the quarterfinals each time. So,
oh, wow.
Both sports, I say I did pretty good. Others may not. I still hold a few records on the rugby side of things. And then on football, I played nose guard. So it's not a glam position, but it's in the trenches.
Oh, listen, it's an important one.
And I got the opportunity to play with some people who are now in the NFL. People who played on the same team as me. Troy Reader, who just won a Super Bowl. Brian O'Neill played right next to me as DN. He's the second best tackle in the league. That's then we played against people like Jabril Peppers and people like that. So it was just a great opportunity, and I keep in touch with most of those guys now. So it's just really cool to look back at it.
When I look at the trajectory of your life, and if I didn't know you, I would think that activism wouldn't be something you would be interested in, because you had more Catholic background. Not although they are community people, don't misunderstand. I don't want to misunderstand that, but you were in a diverse community.
Yeah,
you weren't in an Afrocentric community all of your life. And we're going to talk about where you went to school at. I mean, you didn't choose a historically white college in Maryland, but you chose a historically white college in West Virginia, where racism is not even racism; it's just outright racist.
Yeah.
And to see, and we're going to try our best to go through as much as we can in this little hour we have, but to see that you have such a level of love for activism, African American, or should I say, even poor people who are economically underprivileged. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I've always been very involved with politics and policy, right? So I look at any person, you have four branches that make you up, right? Four different families come together. So your dad's two families, your mom's two families, right? Of those four families, three of them are very politically involved.
Oh, okay.
Here in Delaware alone, I'm like the intersection of Herman Holloway Sr. and the Holloway family,
Okay.
and the Bolden family, who's Stephanie
Oh, wow.
Stephanie T. Bolden, who's a state rep, right? So Herman was the first black state senator, longest African American ever to serve, African American male ever to serve. Stephanie was a former councilwoman, current state rep. She's the longest African American woman to serve. And I'm the intersection of those two families through my grandmother's side. So I've always had the opportunity to see what's going on. My mom, after school, would take me. She works for city council, so I used to do my homework in the back room during council meetings when she had late nights. So while I was doing my homework, I could hear on the TV what was going on in those council meetings and what they were discussing, listening to committee meetings. Now everything's virtual and easier to see on TV, but I was there before all that. They may have just had audio. So that played a big role in opening my eyes to what was really going on, and then seeing what's actually happening in our community, and seeing that sometimes it's a disconnect there, and not everyone who's disconnected knows the right way to go with things, right? So they may know what's going on in their community, but the people in power may not know them. So how can we connect them so that we can work together better?
Wow. So you were able to do that. You were able to show even the bridge of your family. And sometimes I believe what we do, it does impact our young people.
Yeah.
You've watched this, and I'm sure you formed opinions even as a young kid. This ain't right.
Yeah.
I can imagine, because you said you were somewhat of a nerd, so I can imagine this is not right. I mean, you're hearing things, you're hearing city council making decisions, you're hearing people making decisions, and you're saying this is not right, or this is great. Why is it a struggle to make happen? Like, I still cannot understand, and we're not going to get into policy yet, but I still cannot understand why the country cannot deal with this assault weapons. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, why have them here? But we'll deal with that a little bit later. Let's take, for the last couple of minutes we have in this segment, let's look at the fact that you left Wilmington and you went to West Virginia.
Yeah.
Tell me about your college time.
Yeah, so West Virginia was an amazing college. Morgantown is a beautiful city, right? West Virginia is a beautiful state. You head up into the mountains, beautiful if you go hiking, rafting, outdoors person. The city of Morgantown, which is a college town, is very diverse. You have people from all over the world come to Morgantown. You take one step outside of Morgantown, though.
I was there before. Okay.
It's still very stuck in the 40s and 50s. It's a lot of racism there, but also it's a lot of lower income, poor people who live in West Virginia. And I think that's became some of my activism as well, too, because here's the thing. We're living in the same conditions. Our skin colors may be different, right? But it doesn't matter if you only got $5 in your bank account and you're white, and $5 if you're black. You still don't have enough to get a gallon of gas right now. So why are we so divided, right? Why are we fighting each other when really it's not? You shouldn't blame someone else for it who's in the same situation. Y'all should come together and work together to try to fix it, or change those who are empowered so that they can fix it. But yeah, no, West Virginia, it was a great time. Again, I played rugby there. I started out as a forensic science major, which they're number 2 in the nation. That's one of the reasons why I went down there. And I kind of just transitioned over just to criminal justice after. But, you know, the experience is one that I will always be grateful for, because it also opened my eyes to living in a place outside of Delaware. Right? And why Delaware may be a small state, Delaware may have some issues, other people are struggling a lot more than us. You know, and other people are even more in silos than us. And it's weird because we're so small. You know, we have East Side, West Side, North Side, South Bridge, Riverside, and we're like all our own little communities, but unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
But down in West Virginia or up in New York, that would all be one community.
Absolutely.
So while we are in a geographical smaller space, culturally we are divided, but you have to learn how to bring those cultures together.
Yeah. Now, did you do anything in the student government or Black Student Union or anything like that while you were at West Virginia State?
Yeah, so I was a part of the Black Student Union. I didn't do student government, and I was also a part of College Democrats.
Oh, okay.
So student government, I took a long, hard thought on it.
Thought. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thought. But I ended up passing. They wanted me to run for our college's Ellerbe's College senator, and I said no. But then got very involved with the Black Student Union while I was down there, and helped grow, help get the people who were coming down there but didn't know what a Black Student Union was. Right,
Okay.
they're coming from. We had a lot of people from like Indiana, from Arkansas join, who had never had a group of Black students coming together to talk about Black issues.
Yeah.
In a predominantly white space.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, what I want to talk about is he said something that leads me to the next question: what influenced him to remain a Democrat? Because with the way some of the Democrats have treated Coby, I often ask myself, why stay so loyal? When we come back, we'll be right back. And we're back. Well, Coby, at the end of the last segment, I heard you talk about you helped to form the Black Student Union at West Virginia, and then you also was a part of the the Democrats.
Yes,
which was really a minority group because in West Virginia it's very much Republican,
Yeah.
and I'm sure many of the students there were Republican.
Yes.
But I often again ask myself, a young brother who has so much to offer, and how you were treated, and I didn't even know you that well. When you ran for city council just 2 years ago. But it was Democrats that attacked you, all because, in my opinion, you were trying to help people. You decided that, you know what, I want to get in this so that I can help people. And what made you stay loyal to the Democratic Party?
So, I now serve as the vice chair of the Democratic Party. And I ran for that, at the pushing of the rank and file Democrats who are on our RD committees reached out to me and asked me to run for it, because they know I understand what it truly means to be a Democrat. Look, at the end of the day, the party is a party of a big tent, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they love saying, but they may not always act like that. Mm-hmm. Look, you're going to have people from all different backgrounds, from all different economic standings, races, gender, whatever. So your thinking is not going to be the same. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that at the end of the day, you have to find what is common between y'all and what is different. Mm-hmm. And, the big tent model usually means you have more in common than you have different, even though our differences make us stronger, right?
Right.
So I'm a strong Democrat. Now, I say that I don't just vote blue no matter who.
Okay.
Right?
I like that.
I've never been the type of Democrat that just because I'm a Democrat and you're a Democrat, I'm going to 100% do whatever you say, listen to whatever you do, let you go with whatever policy. I'm going to push back. And I think that's what we're supposed to do, right? So I use my skills, I use my organizing, mobilizing, and policy know-how to help push Democrats towards a more community center.
Okay.
What happens a lot sometimes is we means test, right? So how's this going to play out with the Republicans? How's this going to play out with the independents? Well, the greater people voted Democrat to get a Democratic platform done, right?
Right.
You said you wanted to do this. Let's get it done and show people the benefits of it. Let's not take a step back because you're concerned about what some in the minority may say, right? If you go on that line, we're not going to get anywhere with anything, right? We can't. I'm not saying be 100% ram things through like the Republicans did, especially the Republicans down in D.C., But I'm saying, look, things like a $15 minimum wage, right? Or things like creating a statewide pension retirement plan for those who work in non-traditional jobs that traditionally don't have
Right. I
pensions,
understand.
making sure we set something up for them. Why? Because times have changed. Now, I talked to a guy in his late 80s who talked about, a white man who talked about he doesn't understand why me and my generation are so radical and so progressive. Y'all want free everything, free everything. Back in my day, I worked at McDonald's and I paid for college. Well, I could work at McDonald's every hour of the week.
It still won't be.
And that's almost one book.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the inflation has made things so expensive right now. People don't have the same opportunity.
Right.
So canceling student loan debts will help lift up a barrier for a lot of people in my generation. We talk about the fact that this country is now majority renters. This state is majority renters. This city is majority renters, right? Home ownership is down. People aren't buying new cars like they used to. People, they talk about my generation not buying diamond rings. Yeah, it's expensive, right? People are using birthstones and like the Earthstones emerald and stuff like that instead of getting diamonds now. So, we just have to realize where the times are and bring it. I'm not saying leave anyone behind. I'm saying we all have to take the time to sit down and kind of communicate about where we're at with things and how we can get better.
Yeah.
So that's what I view my position as. Again, anyone who knows me in the party knows I'm the people person, right? I can fundraise, I can have the big meetings and everything. I'd like meeting just the people, doing events out with them, tabling events, having opportunities for people to get registered to vote, engaging them about the new ways that we have voting here and pushing for things like that to make sure people have access and knowledge about what's going on. Now, me personally, I have always been a very big advocate for primaries, but smart primaries. If it's super Democratic areas, I think a primary is fine because it's not going to flip. So that way, you still allow the people to have a say in what type of representation they want and what direction they want to go, which works best for their area.
Yeah, something you said a few minutes ago that I wanted to grab real quickly, and that is you talked about if the country or if the city, if the county voted for a Democratic leader, then it is the opinion of the majority, because that's what democracy is all about.
Right.
It's the opinion of the democracy to go with that agenda. I believe one of the major catastrophical failures of the Democratic Party, especially on the national level, is that they have not pushed their own agenda. I watched masterfully how what is his name?
McConnell.
McConnell, excuse me, I'm sorry. How McConnell, he took his time. Even though they're not in the majority right now, he snatched a Supreme Court justice from us. He didn't care, and didn't care what people thought. And I think at some point, now I do know we have some people too far to the right. I am more of the middle person. However, there are as many things that's on the right I do agree with. But I think that if you're going to push an agenda, we cannot sit back and wait to get everybody's approval.
Correct.
And I agree with you 100% on that.
No, that has a lot of influence in, what has a lot of influence in that is money and politics, right? So very similar to what happened in my race. You had big organizations come in and pour money into my opponents because I was calling people out. And I sat down with my advisors, and I had advisors who were in college, advisors who were well seasoned. And, we talked everything out. And it came to the point that I said, look, this is the platform I'm running on. I have to be true to who I am. And that is when I see something that I believe is an injustice, I'm going to call it out. So when I called out things like the fact that we had a horrible affordable housing market here in the city of Wilmington, and that public dollars shouldn't be going to big real estate and developer companies. And even if money does go to them, even if a single penny goes to them, we should be requiring them to hire a minimum of 40% of local hire workforce here to put people who live in Delaware back to work. It may not be city residents fully, but it's putting people in Delaware back to work, right? That keeps the money flowing. That keeps our economy flowing here. It's you know, at the height of the pandemic, when they were doing Rodney Square, I called it out. Why is most of the people working on the Rodney Square project, they're from Ohio, they're from Virginia, they're from New Jersey or Pennsylvania? We have very skilled people here who can do that work.
As a matter of fact, you know, it's interesting because I remember when we built Zion Fair, the church. At that time, it was Hanifa Shabazz. She was the city council person, and she had asked me privately, you know, Pastor Curry, could you please make sure that our residents get some of the work? And I said to her, that's a no-brainer. And matter of fact, when we end up hiring, I think it was Petrocon at the time, was our person, I made it clear to him at least 60% of the workforce has to come from minority contractors, and they have to be in the state of Delaware. And we end up doing even better than that. We have what I call the success of people who are successful in their skill and in their craft to be able to do. But I want to, because I don't want to spend too much time talking, because I'm enjoying your conversation. I agree with you that people will pour in the money when you're true to yourself. You tell me that you are a person who believe in working for the people. When you work for the people, they find a way to silence you by not getting you elected, by pouring a lot of money in. How do we get, because if African Americans could stick together, Latinos, the minorities can stick together, there's no race anywhere we could not win, because they need our vote in order to win.
No, look, I'll say this, right? So while if you can look at my campaign finance reform, or campaign finances, right? That's all public knowledge. I only had 7 or 8 max out donations the whole campaign, right? I raised close to $22,000. Most of my donations were $5, $10, $20. And to raise that much money, I had a little over maybe 1,400 individual donations, right? Which is unheard of for a city of Wilmington race. I had people donate to me from 47 states in D.C. I swear no one lives in North or South Dakota, and no one lives in Wyoming. I couldn't find anyone out there. But it was very people powered, right? It was very low dollar powered, while you had PACs come in, the FOP came in, which is the Fraternal Order of Police, because of Black Lives Matter. And they were like, oh, no, we don't want him on council. And he's too radical.
And we listen.
And, they had mailers where, it's a independent expenditure. So they could say anything on these mailers. And they did, right? They put my face on mailers and said that I wanted to, defund the police, that I wanted to burn down public safety. It was all type of things they were saying, which wasn't true, but it scared people. And they knew if they could scare people into not voting, that will work in their benefit.
And it did, didn't it?
It did.
Now, do you remember what you ran at large? Am I correct?
I ran for first district.
First district, okay. You ran first district. And who was the person that won that district?
Linda Gray.
Okay, and Linda Gray, how did, and we're not talking any negativity, but how did the voting go? Do you remember, did you get,
so she got 26%. The person in second got 26, she got 26.9. The second person got 26.1, and then I got 23.7.
Okay. So what happens is they neutralize that race.
Right. And then there was a third or fourth person who got, I think, 19, something like that.
Yeah. See, and that's what they tend to do, is to neutralize it or run people against people so that our vote won't matter. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm really working hard on behind the scenes is to ensure that when they come up with their candidate, because I don't know whether Bazicki is going to run again, but he probably will, because folks don't like to give up their power. They'll die in a position. Didn't matter. They hold on to it. And that's why Trump is doing what he's doing. But one of the things I'm trying to do behind the scenes is to start talking to our people about, it's important that you use your mind and vote. People who have a track record, and what you do on the source is very powerful. And I brought you on to have a conversation with you today. Let's talk about the man. Let's talk about the person. A person who is led by their convictions. That is a rarity in politics today. They find a person who has very little experience and say, you run and we will make sure you get there. And it has been working for them. How do we turn that around?
Yeah. So again, I think there's a lot of Womentonians out there who would make great politicians, right? Now, will they ever run for office? Probably not, because they hate politics because of the negatives, the negativity around it right now, and they think that's all it ever can be. So trying to convince people like that to, no. If you get in there, you get a good group of people in there who truly care, who truly want to center their community, you can do anything for this city, right? You have people who are currently on council who feel as though their loyalty is 100% to the mayor because the mayor helped finance their campaign. The mayor helped get them elected. And look, maybe he did, but come on, at a certain point in time, you have to see how this is negatively impacting your community. We just went through a huge fight that a lot of people in power are upset with me about eminent domain.
Oh, don't start that.
The city could actually do that process, right, of taking some of these blighted properties and taking these people to court to take these properties, put a lien on a house, take it to share sale. But what they wanted to do is change the eminent domain laws so that they can use it for economic development purposes. In development zones where they're developing. So they paired it with a bundling bill. So now the city gets these properties, they get a whole bunch on a block, then they can bundle it with apex bidding, so you only pay what's owed in taxes. You don't have to give anything back, pay the actual market rate. And now you're taking it and giving it to the land bank, which has had a long history of corruption. Or you're giving it to developers to develop that area. But here's the thing. City Council just took a park from the community, right? So they're saying, oh, well, no one uses this park. That's not true. You can sit down. If you actually go out your office, you'll see people there all throughout the day. They sit there, they read, there's kids playing and everything. When it comes to the eminent domain, what was in the bill and what they were saying were two different things.
Yeah, I know.
And the bill was only a page and like a quarter on the back, right? It wasn't a lot in it. But the fact that they're saying it sets up all these processes, no, it doesn't. If it did, put it in a bill. Now, what the bill did say is, even if the property is vacant, but it's all your taxes are paid up on it, property's in good shape. It has nothing in there about blighted. So it means the property could be in good shape. It means they can still take that house.
And give you fair market value, which is up to them to say what is fair market value.
Exactly. Now, there's a house right now over on Lancaster Ave that's next to a land bank property. The land bank tore their property down, and when they did this, they messed up the foundation. So the city comes in, says, hey, you can't live in here until you fix the foundation. This was our fault. We'll offer you a few $1,000s to fix it. A foundation of a house, a few $1,000s? No. That's easily $50,000, $60,000, depending how much the damage is, right? So the lady who lives there, she has kids and everything. She cannot live there anymore. They said you can't live in there, but she still has to pay the taxes. She owned the house. She still has to pay the taxes on it. Her and her kids have been living in an apartment for 4 years. When this eminent domain bill came up, the representative who sponsored it used that house as an example of one of the houses that they would be able to take, even though they caused the damage. When you do your research and look at how many other properties have been damaged next to land bank properties, it's a lot out there. It's over 50.
Wow.
So therefore, now you're looking at that and you're looking at the apex bidding and bundling bill. Oh, so now that makes sense. So now all those properties who've been vacant, we only look for the properties that have been vacant for more than 3 years. They can take those properties from those people who didn't do anything wrong, take those properties from bundling the two properties together and sell it to a developer.
Unbelievable.
So that's, why we look to break down policy, and we do it in a way, it's not just one or two people. We have UD professors, we have Dell State professors, we have college students from all over who do research for us. We have people who know, who've worked in the field of housing and worked in the field of criminal justice and different fields we work in. And then we bring that all together, we craft a strategy, and then we go out. Now, I take a lot of heat because usually, even if I'm not the one saying it originally, right, they know my hands are probably somewhere, which is probably true, right? What I try to do is, let's see who's been impacted the most. Let's center the conversation around them, right? So we listen to them, listen to what the issues are, and then we pair that with our skills, our resources to come up with the policy that best fits that situation.
And that's probably why they want you out of the way.
Yeah.
Because you think too much, you study too much, you research too much, you try to help people and get people to understand. There is a frustration, and we can ready to go to a commercial break, but there's a frustration that has to be inside of you when you fighting for people and they won't help you fight. When we come back, we're going to address that. We'll be right back.
What is happening right now in Buffalo and across this country is white supremacy is growing back to the point of the 60s. Excuse me? First off, you raised your son to be a monster. You gave your son a gun and he used it to go kill people. I don't give two craps what they feel about their son.
And we're back. Many things we've talked about so far. And Brother Coby, I'm just grateful that you took the time to talk with me today. And I'm hoping and trusting that somebody will hear and learn something. But the last thing we talked about before we went to the break was there has to be a frustration. You fight hard, and I watched you, and I don't always get out there with you. Sometimes I'm behind the scenes, or if on certain issues that you deal with, and to see people just disregard who you're fighting for. I'm not talking about the folks who strategically come against you, but I'm talking about the people who you're fighting for. They just settle. Is there frustration, or how do you even handle it if it is?
Yeah, no, there's definitely some frustration sometimes. And I try to explain it to people, whatever you want, you have the power to go get.
Okay.
And what they're going to try to do, some people in power try to do, is change the narrative. They offer you something lesser to make you happy in the short term instead of fixing the long-term issue.
Okay.
Right? It's like pinning a Band-Aid on a dam that's leaking, right?
Okay.
And some people, they listen, and if that's what they feel is right for them in the time, that's fine. But I want to see that transformational change, right? That systematic change is what I'm in it for, right?
Okay.
So any work I do, of course I push back and try to get the best, but if people want to settle, that's fine, right? And whether it's the work through the NAACP, by just regular organizing, you see things like when we're fighting for police reform, it gets to a point that the government will offer money to families, right, to settle and to end the argument for the sole purpose they don't really want to change the policies that cause the ability for the officers to kill that individual, right? And we seen them try to pull the families apart. Well, they can't get the wife or the sibling, right? So they go to the parent, they go to the cousin to come out and try to be the public face, saying, "Oh, this is good now. We believe them." So it's just little things like that causes a lot of internal stress sometimes. But overall, most people, when we train people, when we break things down for people, we give them the ability to do things on their own, and that keeps them engaged, right?
Okay.
That keeps them, that fire in them to get what they truly want as well.
Yeah. I have a couple real quick questions that I just want to throw at you, and you can give me your response. First, what are some of the national organizations that you are involved in?
Yeah, so I sit on a lot of boards and work with a lot of groups. Black Voters Matter,
Okay.
the NAACP Delaware branch, and national as well too. Work for the Urban League, Network Delaware, the Sierra Club, and then the DNC.
Now, are you in the Delaware NAACP or the Wilmington? Or
I'm in both.
You in
so
both?
I'm a
So what are
member
y'all
of the
doing?
Wilmington branch, but most of my work is through the state
Why?
conference. Because the Wilmington branch doesn't meet. They've
Excuse
been
me?
inactive for a while.
Oh, I'm a member of the Wilmington branch, and I have not seen much of nothing, and that's why I've asked you that question.
Correct.
You know, what is the purpose of me holding a membership? I'm a life member, but my dues went to the Wilmington. I'm trying to figure out, what are y'all doing? What are we doing?
Yeah, so they haven't had a meeting in a while. I've reached out multiple times, and nothing's going on. So most of the work I do is under the state branch, as their community coordinator and a special committee for police and reform chair. So it's covering Wilmington, but the Wilmington branch should be the most powerful branch in the state.
With all the stuff that's going on here.
Wilmington, by percentage, is the 12th blackest city in the nation. It is critical that our civil rights organizations here are strong, and that they're working towards making sure we have equality and opportunity for all our residents here in the city.
I think that would change the landscape if we would be a little bit, and that's why I asked that question. And I meant to ask that offline, but I'm glad I asked it online, because at the end of the day, my money is there, and I'm very much active, and I love political action, as well as making sure we're taking care of minority rights and economically deprived people. Let me also ask, since you went there, what is your feeling on this whole? We just had a police, or should I say, 8 police officers or more shot over. Well, they say they had 60 wounds. Some of them could have been exit.
90 shots.
So what this whole police reform thing?
That was Jalen Walker, a unarmed black man. It seems as though, we got some accountability for George Floyd, right? But that wasn't enough, and I keep saying that's not enough. We saw what happened with Rodney Robinson down in Dewey Beach here in Delaware. What happened with Lamont Moses over Riverside here. This is, in 2020, all eyes were on police, and they still killed a ton of unarmed black people. But yet, just the other day, there was a shooting on 4th of July. In Chicago, and I think over 30 people hurt, right? A few were killed as well, too. I don't know the exact number.
6.
White shooter, they were able to chase him down, detain him with his firearms on him. Not a single shot fired. And
people don't pay, and I don't want to cut you off, but people don't pay attention to that. That those dynamics are very powerful. You have they put out some information on the black guy that he was shot from the window while they were chasing him. But then when they caught him, they could not find any weapons, and he had none. But yet 60 to 90 wounds was on this brother. I just don't understand, and I just don't. Are we that much of a threat?
To some people, we are.
Wow.
We are. And you look at the vast number of mass shootings in the shooter either taking their own life or being captured by the police. Not being shot by the police, captured by the police. But yet we look at stories time and time again, going all the way back to when I was young. Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Alton Sterling, Sandra Bland, Lamont Moses, the Jacob Blake. The story, I could sit here this whole show and just name unarmed black people who've been killed. We can't go shopping. We can't have Skittles, iced tea, sell some CDs, sell some loose cigarettes. Nothing. We're deemed a threat. You can't even break down on the side of the road and call the cops for help. And they get there and assume you're trying to steal the car that you call and ask them for help with.
It's sad.
It is sad. It's a sad reality. And it happens because we have things like the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. And Delaware is nationally known for having the most pro-cop Bill of Rights, anti-community Bill of Rights.
And didn't Delaware group endorse Trump?
They did.
Didn't I'm gonna say that again because somebody's like, "What did he just say?" Didn't the Delaware police, you call it FOP, endorse Donald Trump?
Yes, they did.
Wow,
they proudly did.
And every Democrat, and I want to make this clear: every Democrat to support this junk need to be mindful that we're not going to be asleep at the wheel forever.
Here's the thing: I'm not saying just go out there and arrest every cop. No, absolutely not.
Right.
What I'm saying is, look, in any other profession, whether you're a teacher, you work in a nonprofit, you have reviews that you have to go through. You have audits you have to go through. If you're a nurse or a doctor and someone dies under your care, they review that. The police do it all internally. They deem what they believe is, oh, well, you also got to look at the stress of the officer. You got to look at what he was going through that day, the stress of the job. Well, I'm sorry. If you're signing up to be a police officer in 2022, you can't be scared to get shot at.
It's called being a professional.
You can't be scared to potentially go into a situation where something bad. That is a part of the job.
Right.
And I get that. And it's not for everyone.
But how can you be so afraid when it's a black person?
Correct.
But not so afraid when you got a person with a high powered
AR-15.
How could you not be afraid of that person?
Another gun with a bump stock on it. You're not scared of those, but you're scared of a black man or a black woman reaching after you just said, get your license and license and registration for reaching up and trying to get it.
But see, that's a sign of not knowing people and and what you know about them poses a very strong threat. Let me move to another one because I know that some of these topics are very dear to you, and I want to make sure that we are respectful to that. But what about this bipartisan gun right bill?
Yes.
Okay, it was passed. The young man who we just made attention to, he was 22. So this wouldn't even affect him. What is your feeling on this bill?
So why some of this legislation that got passed on the Senate, on the federal level is good. Universal background checks and everything, not just criminal background checks. They go through all your background, right? That's good. That's going to stop some things. Here in Delaware, we've done a little bit more, raising the age, having red flag laws. So if you're in a domestic violence situation and you report it, the officers can come in, confiscate the guns away, and then you have to go to a court order judge to see if you get those guns back or nothing. It's like a 48-hour hold, right? So they're not taking your guns away forever. But if you are deemed someone who don't need it because of a violent past, then you won't get them back. But if it's another situation, you will get them back, right? So it's things like that we've done here in Delaware. Straw purchasing has passed here in Delaware, and that's good, right? There's video, the first case that was prosecuted, the lady went in, got a shopping cart full of handguns. White lady. Leaves. They tracked her and everything. She comes right to the city of Wilmington and gives the guns over and puts those guns on our streets. That's straw purchasing.
Right.
That's stopping stuff like that. And there's people down in Leg Hall who held that up for a while. Even my representative held it up for a while.
Wow.
So it's good bills like that. But also you have to look at it. There is a lot of different fractions of gun violence, right? The number one is suicide.
Okay.
Or self-inflicted wounds by accident, right? So people playing with guns at home, kids playing with guns at home, right? Then you have the mass shootings, which make the news, make everyone very sad. You see what happened in Buffalo, down in Texas and stuff like that. But then it's, another one that we live with every single day if you live in the city of Wilmington. And that's just regular old gun violence on our streets.
Right,
that's not talked about. You have to do something about that. And what gets me upset is when people in power use the fact that people were just shot and killed in the city of Wilmington to push their other agendas. Oh, the gun violence is because of blighted properties. Let's take all these properties and give them to Bacini, Poland, and build up skyscrapers and build up condos. Well, no, that doesn't solve anything but moves everyone out. It just moves the issue to another part of the community. How about we actually look to see what's wrong, right?
Yeah.
How do we bring jobs here? How do we develop our workforce? How do we develop a better housing stock here in Delaware, right? Not just condos that are going to raise the price and then that also raises the price of affordable housing, but how can we make sure people who are in homes right now, how can we get them to transition from renter, which the city is predominantly renter now, to homeowners? And when they're in homeowners, what program can we set up to help them with, whether it's mortgage relief, whether it's repairs? It's small things like that that help change the culture of a community.
And that's one of the reasons why I said that whoever is dealing with the violence in our city or putting a plan together, it has to be more holistic than just one-dimensional.
Yep.
And they tend to say, let's get rid of the blighted properties, but you forget there's an economic issue that's going on and a couple other things. Let me move to another one, Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
Help me to understand your feeling on that. We only got a couple minutes.
Yeah,
seconds.
so Delaware has codified Roe versus Wade,
I saw
right?
that.
In the right for reproductive rights for women. And they just expanded it even more to protect people who have to come in from other states. So why it's not a scary issue here in Delaware?
Mm-hmm.
What it is the fact that individuals are still going to get abortions no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
This takes away the access to safe health care to make sure they're doing it the right way so that they're not harmed either. And when you look at it, right now, there's a 10-year-old in Ohio who was raped.
Yes.
She weighs 85 pounds and she's pregnant now.
Mm-hmm. And they said, before you go any further on that one, they said that this 10-year-old they realized she was pregnant in her 6th week in a couple of days, which made her miss it by a couple of days.
3 days.
That's egregious.
3 days.
That's egregious.
So first off, you're almost 4 or 5 weeks before you even notice sometimes,
mm-hmm.
right? So that Ohio has a 6-week ban.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they found out and could get her scheduled, it would have been 6 weeks, 3 days, right? Mm-hmm. Or the day they found out, it was 6 weeks and 3 days. So she couldn't go in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And then the sad thing about that whole situation is a Republican state senator in Ohio came out his mouth and said, this is a blessing in disguise.
I didn't hear that, but that's crazy.
A blessing in disguise.
Wow.
The fact is, and he said, well, if she can't take care of the kid, pick the kid up for adoption. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Our foster care system here is horrible. It's horrendous. We have kids who are still struggling, who are aging out our foster care program, just being thrown to the streets, thrown to the wolves, and then going into a life of crime because they have to fend for themselves to make it in this world. If that's the route that they're saying go, well, why don't they put up money to actually fund our foster care system?
I often criticize those who are pro-life and say, when they say it begins in the womb, well, it doesn't end in the womb.
Right.
What do they do beyond the womb for our young people, our people who are born?
The Senate candidate in Ohio, the Republican Senate candidate, said recently in an interview, at the beginning he was talking about being pro-life and how this decision was the best decision the courts ever made, right? But then at the end of that sentence, he was talking about how he was pro-death penalty. And again, the nerd in me sitting there like, am I the only one noticing this?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
their agenda that they're pushing right now is a coordinated agenda throughout the nation. But Delaware has codified and has opened up avenues to make sure people have safe healthcare avenues for people for reproductive rights.
Yeah, and this whole Roe versus Wade being overturned, it has to do with way more than just abortion.
100%.
It has to do with a whole lot more, and people get their mindset on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Coby, this hour went by so fast, and I'm really not happy that we have to stop our conversation. I'm going to invite you back another time.
Okay.
But thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. And I also want to thank you on behalf of those who you represent. You represent people beyond Wilmington, beyond the state of Delaware. When there's a need, you go to Washington. You go wherever the need is, Atlanta, wherever. And I'm grateful for that. And I hope that the people will honor you. Do you think you'll ever decide to run again for office?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely run again. Again, I have to when I decide, it's going to be, what I feel as though my community's calling me towards.
Okay.
And positions I think that I can best give back to my community, right? And it may not even be the most traditional positions. The reason why I ran for city council over state rep or for something else was because I feel as though city council has more impact on the day-to-day life of what's going on in my community, right? Yeah. And I am an advocate for a lot of other communities, but at the end of the day, I want to see my community thrive. So that's always going to be at the top of my mind.
Well, I hope and trust, and I'm going to make sure that if I'm still living, that I'm going to be one of the supporters. You have done well. You have helped people. There's a lot of things that's not being said that you are instrumental in making sure happen for people. You keep the issues at front. That's why the powers to be who are negatively affecting our community want you silenced. I encourage you, run for office. I encourage you to get in policy, because one of the things I used to say, and I'm going to close this show, I used to always say when I was in college, that my freshman year only, that I'm not going to get in no fraternity because they have this, that, and the other. And I named several things that they were. It was negative. And one of the old heads, Frank Tick Coleman, never will forget him, he said, you can't change nothing from the outside. You have to get in to do the changing that you want to see done. So even though you are advocating, as long as we got people who are sitting in positions, political positions to make a change and won't make it, it's going to just cause us to stay in the streets longer, do more litigation. I hope you and a whole cadre of you will decide, I want to run for office, and I pray you win. And I'm going to be looking out and waiting to see when it happens. Thank you so very much, Coby, for all that you do.
Me. This was a good conversation.
Amen.
I look forward to more.
And you will have more. Trust me when I tell you that. We'll be right back. And we're back. Listen, it has been an outstanding conversation. Coffee with Curry today meant a lot to me. We had an opportunity to see a young brother who has certainly done well. He's been educated well in both the private and parochial schooling, and he also went on to college, educated himself, raised by his grandmother and mother, doing well in society. It's in his bones to be a part of the political system. I hope you paid attention to that, and we won't allow the big money to get in the way if he so chooses to run again. Not only he, but others. Let's look at the issues, Wilmington. Let's start looking at the issues and start voting for candidates who will help us make things better. Many of you are life members of the Wilmington community, and yet regentification is happening. It won't be long before we won't know Wilmington as we've known it. Yes, crime is high, but we have to elect people who can find people who are able to come in and help us with this crime problem. Economic status is very low. The report was supposed to give us 50,000 jobs, or 5,000 jobs. It didn't happen. We have to stop allowing politicians to lie to us, and then we let them dictate the trajectory of our city. This city is great. I am housed in a community here in Southbridge. We are the oldest institution in Southbridge. In 1919, East Zion Fair was founded right at 313 Hurge Hill Street. We are the oldest and the largest employer in Southbridge. We're going nowhere. I just hope and trust you will do the same with starting to hold those politicians accountable. Elect those who will represent your interests, and de-elect, even though that is not even a word, de-elect, those individuals who want to play games. Until the next time we get together, may the Lord God bless you real good.